Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second session of the summer term 2026 of SunoikisisDC Digital Classics. This term, as you know, is dedicated to exploring digital scholarly editions in classics, Byzantine, and medieval studies. And today's session will be dealing with tools and environments for publishing digital scholarly editions. And our speakers today are Chiara Martignano and Roberto Rosselli del Turco, who are really authorities in this topic. And as always, if you're watching live, that is on April 28th, 2026, feel free to write in the live comment section of the YouTube video and tell us where you're watching from. And of course, you can ask questions or leave comments that our speakers will address at the end of the session. As always, today we have a lot to cover and always far too little time. So without further ado, I'd like to leave the floor to today's speakers. And of course, thank you in advance for agreeing to being here today. So Chiara, Roberto, please go ahead and I will put your desktop, yours, Chiara, or Roberto's, which one would you?
Thank you.
Okay. There you go.
Okay. Shall I begin?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the kind invitation and for the super organization to your organizers. And we're very happy to be here and to be able to exchange and discuss about this topic with the students and with you. So thank you again for having us. So today's program, we'll start with an introduction about the life cycle of digital scholarly edition to give a look at what the creation process of a DSE, I'll call it like that so far, from now on, in order to spare some syllables, because digital scholarly edition is very long. And then we also present the difference between tools for digital philology that can be used for either production, publication, or mixed tools. Then we move on to the first actual part of the seminar, and we will discuss publishing tools and environments for publishing DSEs. And we will discuss a few remarks about why visualization and publication is so important in digital scholarly editing. Then I will give you some aspects to consider before picking a tool for the publication of your digital edition project, hoping to help you find the right tool for you. And then I will present just some of the most frequently adopted tools for matter of time. It will not be possible to present all of them, of course, but I will leave you with resources so that you will be able to find more tools on your own. And of course, if you want to write me an email and ask me for advice or to go further in your exploration, I will be happy to help. And in the second part, we will present EVT, which stands for Edition Visualization Technology. Perhaps some of you have already heard about this tool or have seen it in action. Anyway, we will present its history briefly with some examples of digital editions that were actually implemented using EVT. And we will present its main features, focusing on EVT3, which is the latest version of the software. Then we'll move on to the exercise part, which will be split in two parts, as we will explain later. And of course, we will try to leave as much room as possible for the final discussion and Q&A. Okay, introduction. I think you have already downloaded the materials from today's lessons, but here is quickly the QR code and the link, if you have not done so yet. And just a few seconds, and then I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, in the meantime, I ask the organizers if anything is off with my video or microphone, please, if you can notify me by voice, because I can't see anything right now apart from my slides.
Everything's perfect.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, introduction. So I tried to sketch the creation process of a DSE. And of course, the starting point are the starting materials on which an editor wants to work on. And these starting materials could be both original documents, so a scroll, a set of manuscripts, a text-bearing object such as a vase, or also an electronic document, why not? And also editors and scholars use previous research products by other scholars. So for example, digital editions made by others, or printed edition, or a data set. And the starting materials, the first step we need to do in order to create a digital edition is we need to collect the data, so data collection. And the results of this first phase are usually the digital reproductions of the materials we need to study. We can also call them digital twins. And usually we also have text transcriptions, and sometimes also maybe a very rudimental preliminary data set. For example, if we want to list all the witnesses that underlie our edition, we can create a quick list in a spreadsheet, right? And with writing down for the hosting institutions and some important information such as the language or everything we may need in that moment. Then we move on to the second phase, which is data analysis. And in this phase, what we do, we can carry out different types of operations. It could be a collation, it could be a lemmatization. We can also try to start working on the interpretation of the text and maybe add our annotations. And then we move on to the third part, which is data production. And usually all the materials we have produced and collected so far, we put them in a more organic form within electronic documents, usually TI documents, or also inside database records if we are also building a database. And in this phase, it is common to publish some preliminary publications, maybe with the reflections about the work so far and the work in progress and how it is going and so on. And the last part is, of course, data publication. And usually the result for a digital edition is a website containing the digital edition itself, and perhaps if you have produced a database. And sometimes some people also like to provide users with a printed publication, so a printed version of their digital edition. So of course, I've set these phases I've put them on a line, but actually the process is iterative. So it is a cycle. And it is common that during the creation of a digital edition, you have to go back and forth across the different phases, depending on problems you may encounter or things that you want to investigate deeper or differently. So you may need to run new analysis or to recreate the ETI documents or collect more data. And so the publication phase, often what you see in digital edition is that you have websites where some preliminary versions, like alpha versions or beta versions of the digital editions are published, but only after a few months or years, the final version of the digital edition is published. And so let's talk now about the difference between the different types of tools that you can use as a digital philologist in your creation process. So production tools, you can use them usually in the first phases, in the first steps of your process. So usually you can use them to do the data collection. For example, you can use a software like Transcribus to carry out automatically the transcription of the text. Or you can use them in the analysis phase. For example, you can use Colletext to carry out an automatic collation, or you can look at your textual data with tools such as Volume Tools. And then you can also use them in the production. So when you need to create your own new documents and new data. For example, a very common tool is the Oxygen XML editor for creating a digital edition based on TEI. And then the data that you produce with the help of these tools in these three different phases are included inside the digital edition. Publication tools are a bit different because they usually come in last, but not always, but often at the very end of the process, and they are used to create the digital edition, so the website, the visualization, the online visualization, starting from the TI documents and the digital twins or reproductions you have collected and created at the beginning of the process. So we also have mixed tools, and mixed tools basically they allow you to do both the production phase and the publication phase. And mixed tools, of course, sound ideal for two reasons, because they allow you to simplify the workflow, because even if you have already published for the first time your digital edition, if you need to revise your data, if you can do everything within the same tool, it usually updates also the data in the visualization interface automatically. So you do not have to think about, okay, now I have to update all the other products that I have produced during my process. And the other reason is because usually when you're working with the same tool, you do not have to worry about incompatibility or conversion issues between different formats. So you usually work with something without worrying, okay, this is in the page XML format, but then I need to convert it to TI and then back to HTML. No, you usually do not have to think about that. But the downside of mixed tools is that they usually have higher costs. So they usually are they're not for free, or if they are usually linked to a kind of nationally funded infrastructure. And so in order to be able to use it, you have to have some requirements and qualifications. For example, you have to be able to create a collaboration with the people in the infrastructure. So let's say that it's not as simple to use and to set up. So there's a higher complexity. So for example, if you're just a student or a scholar, like I suppose most of you right now watching are, and it's not as simple to use as other solutions. We will focus on publication tools. Okay, an example of mixed tools is Transcribus sites. So again, I was mentioning Transcribus as an example of production tools. Transcribus also provides users with the possibility of publishing their own transcriptions with this tool, which is quite easy to use and also has a built-in content management system, CMS, with standard functionalities such as text queries that allows you to easily and quickly publish your transcriptions as a diplomatic edition, for example. So it is suitable for that type of editions, but it is not for free. Okay, part one, publishing tools and environments. Okay, so why is visualization so important in a DSC project? So I think there are three main reasons, and I would like to present them to you with some concrete examples. So the first reason is that I was saying that usually publication tools are used in the for the final phase of a digital edition project, but being able to see your data allows you to check it in a more effective and in a more user-friendly way. And also it allows you to share your data with your colleagues, your co-workers. So being able to visualize and publish your data, not just at the end of the process, but also during the process of the creation of a DSC, allows you to work better, both iteratively and collaboratively. So here is an example. I'm currently working in a digital edition project on a collection of sentences in Byzantine Greek written during the Middle Ages, and I was tasked with the transcription of the Latin translation of this text. But because I'm not a classicist, so I'm not familiar with Latin, and it's even worse with Greek, of course, I wanted to be able to check better my transcription work that I'm carrying out in the TI format. And also I wanted to be able to share my work with my supervisor and my colleagues that are more that are classicist, and so they can help me also on the more textual part. So I set up with EVT3 a small prototype edition of my transcription, and I've published it with the GitHub Pages solution, so that it is easy to share it and to really to see my data and in an easier way than just looking at it in the Oxygen editor. The second reason is that when you're working on a digital edition, you usually have to deal with different types of data. And also you want to maybe study or focus on some innovative aspects of your research, right? So you really need to think about how you want to better present and highlight these different types of data and these innovative aspects that you have within your text, your digital edition. Here is an example of the dynamic edition of the Declaration of Arbroath. This edition provides users with many different types of visualizations. And among these different views, there is also this heat map that was conceived in order to highlight how many times and how much this declaration was revised and manipulated for different political intents throughout its history. So what you see here is the original document, so the original declaration. And these rectangles on the text highlight the parts of the text that are subject to variation in the subsequent versions. And here I have selected this tiny rectangle. As you can see, there's nothing here in the original document and also in the first version of the document. But in the later version, a long sentence has been added to serve a particular political intent. The third reason is that when you are planning a printed edition, usually the way you can arrange the text on the page are quite standardized and fixed. So there aren't many different opportunities to visualize the text differently. But in a digital edition, it is different. You have more freedom. But because you have more freedom, you also need to think about how you really want to present your data. So here is an example of this edition where you can see they've decided to use a tool called Lera. And this tool basically is designed to present collation results. And as you can see, the different versions of the text are here, A, B, C, D, with the corresponding siglum. And each column is the version of the text, but all the texts are divided into chunks that correspond to the rows. So you basically have these squares that are compared one next to each other. And here you have a sort of both heat map and navigation tool, because you can see at a glance which are the chunks of text that are more subject to variation within the tradition, but also you can click on one of these very tiny rectangles to navigate, to go to the selected part of the text. Okay, so for these three main reasons, visualization is important for digital scholarly editors. What the ideal tool should be like. So it should be easy to use, of course. The easier, the better. So it should provide you with comprehensive documentation, tutorials, if possible, and user support. And also, it is nice when a tool has a wide users community, because in this way you can both contact other scholars that have already used those tools to ask them how they found them, how they found working, how it was for them to work with that tool. And also, it is possible to look at other editions that maybe are close to your field or to the text you want to study, and to assess if that tool can actually be useful for you as well. Then it should be open, so it should be usable and accessible for all users. And it should be open access, or at least provide users with a free plan that is adequate enough to build a complete digital edition. It should be robust and durable, of course. So you do not want to constantly worry if your digital edition will survive in the web for at least 5 years. You want something that can really last in the years after you finish the work. And so the tool has to be based on standard languages and technologies, and also it should be compatible with the standard formats and the standards of the DH community. So, for example, the TEI, and also for images, IIIF. And it should be also actively maintained by its developers. And last but not least, a good tool should be customizable. So customizable, first of all, in terms of graphical user interface and features, but also it is great when it is open source, because in that way you can really change aspects that do not fit your edition, and by working on the code directly, or maybe asking a programmer, a developer to help you out with that. And also it is nice when it is possible to integrate your tool in your workflow through APIs or with external libraries, so that you can really use that tool in a more efficient way. And this is very important, especially for big projects that have to deal with many texts. So to really make the publication system faster. Okay, so what are the some of the most frequently adopted publication tools? So I wanted to start with TI Garage, even if it's not properly a publication tool, but a conversion tool, because, well, first of all, it is a free tool that has been officially developed by the TI. And it allows you to convert a TI document, for example, to the XHTML format. So it allows you to quickly create a static website that is perfect as a simple solution to visualize your document online, but also it could be a great starting point to develop more complex online visualization. And of course, it is suitable for all types of editions. Then one of the most famous and adopted tools for publishing a DSC is, of course, the TI Publisher. It is free and open source. It has a very wide users community. It is based on the TI processing model, which means that basically you can style the way you want to visualize your text within your TI edition. And it is also customizable further with odd files, and it is suitable for all types of editions. So here you see the digital edition of a collection of poems by Cesare Pavese called Lavorare Stanca. And you can see they built a diplomatic edition using TI Publisher. But again, it is possible to create also critical editions, and it allows you quite freedom in terms of customization. Then we have Citation. Citation basically was created following the same idea of the TI boilerplate. Perhaps some of you have heard of this older tool that I think it is no longer actively maintained. But the idea behind TI boilerplate and Citation is the same. So you take a TI document and you convert it, and you convert each TI element to a corresponding HTML5 element. And then you can customize this HTML element with CSS rules. So you can style it to make it cuter and nicer and more readable. And also you can add behaviors to the element with some JavaScript functions. Again, this tool is suitable for all types of editions. It is free, it is open source, and it is a perfect way to create a static digital edition, or again, as a starting point to build something more complex. And here is an example taken by from the Journal of Scholarly Editing, which has this, which in every issue, the journal, they publish one or two, sometimes three micro editions, that's how they call them. And these micro editions are all TI based and then published with Citation. Here we have The Mark on the Wall by Virginia Woolf. Okay, and then one other tool is Edition Crafter. So Edition Crafter is more recent, so I'm not sure. So I think it's not as known and as adopted yet as the other tools I've mentioned so far. But again, it is free and open source. It is based on both the TI and the IIIF standards, and it allows you to publish digital editions as static websites. As you have noticed, I am putting an emphasis on the static word because, again, if our goal is to build something robust and durable, sometimes the easiest way is to use tools that allow us to create something that is static, and so that we do not need to take care too much of the maintenance on the long term, right? So, and because you're mostly students today, this solution usually are all for free and allow you also to create something in a simple way, but that it is still high quality and compliant with the community standards. And this type of tool is more suitable for diplomatic, interpretative, and annotated editions. And yes, I think they're all okay. So I apologize if you were expecting to see more tools, but we will leave room during the Q&A session if you want to see more tools, or if you want to see one of the tools I mentioned more in detail and maybe some examples. If you download the slides, today's slides, all the examples I've put in the presentation, you can click on them and go see them in action, so you can really grasp better how they work and how the tools can be used and which results they allow you to achieve. In the meantime, I will leave you, as promised, with resources where you can find more tools. The first resource, it's a bit of self-promotion really, because it's a catalog that I built for my PhD thesis, and then I relaunched in a more launched in a better way. It's called DSE Tools. It is a catalog of software tools for digital scholarly editing. And as you can see here, is a screenshot of tools that are for data visualization and publication. And as you can see, some of them were not even mentioned today. And then we also have other important catalogs, for example, TAPOR, Text Analysis Portal for Research, which is more general, and it includes different types of research tools for the digital humanities in general. So while my catalog is more focused on digital philology, is more specific, this one, TAPOR, allows you to find tools, for example, to build a timeline, or to visualize data on an interactive map. So all of these tools are usually very much used also in the context of a digital edition, but you can find many of these tools here. And then we have even more general catalogs, but the one built by OpenAir, and also the catalog of community developed tools and services put together by the daraya.eu infrastructure. And you can also check out the catalogs that perhaps you have already used and explored by Franzini and Sale of digital editions. Of course, the perspective here is different because they present to you the editions, but you can also find information about the tools that have been used to produce the editions. So if there's a digital edition that you really like, and if you think that you would like to follow the same workflow that they have used, my recommendation is to go check on the digital edition website if they provide you with information about the workflow they used and the tools they used. But in case they don't, because sadly sometimes in digital editions this type of documentation is missing, you can also check these two catalogs. Okay, so this is this is all for now. But again, I will be happy to answer to your questions about what I've just presented in the Q&A. I would like to move on to EVT. So the EVT project was born as the browser component of the digital Rosselli book edition. And basically, back then, software tools that were available were too limited or complicated, or they were proprietary, or they were tied to some specific requirements, or they had a mix of all these problems. So the idea of Professor Roberto del Turco was to build something that could cover the basic needs for a digital edition. So a viewer for manuscript images alongside with the TI diplomatic transcriptions, and also a linking functionality to link the image to the text, and two different edition levels to present the text at an interpretive and at a diplomatic level, and then a simple text search function. And this tool also had to be simple to use and to deploy, and it had to be standard compliant. So he decided to build this tool by himself with the help of the students of the master's degree in digital humanities of the University of Pisa. And they designed the tool from the outset in order for it to be modular, so that it could evolve more easily in a general purpose tool that could be useful for other projects. And this idea proved to be a very good idea, because actually after that first version, the EVT software and project grew thanks to the collaboration with many other projects that have implemented new features. What are the main features of EVT? First of all, it is open source. So you are free, of course, to download it, to use it, but also to modify it. It aims at covering the most common needs for the TEI XML-based editions. So you can publish a digital facsimile. You can also publish a diplomatic and interpretive edition together with the digital twin, so the digital reproduction. It also allows you to publish a critical edition. It is rich in functionality, because it provides an image zoom, a navigation by miniatures for the manuscript pages. You can also see the quire structure of the manuscript or printed book. And there's also text search. It supports named entities like people and places. And again, it is compliant with the web standards, so HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. It is highly flexible and configurable. So basically, not to brag, but all the good aspects that I mentioned as characteristics that you should look for in a good tool, EVT complies with those. So that is really good. It is also designed to be user-friendly for both our targeted users, the editors on one hand, and on the other hand, the readers. So for the editors, EVT basically is there's a conceptual separation within the EVT software between data and the software itself. So basically, you only have to worry about the encoding without having to worry about the viewer. So this is also the working of the tools that I have showed you in the first section of this seminar. So all of these tools are designed for you to focus on the data, on the TI edition, and not having to worry too much on the software. The layout is configurable, so you as an editor can decide which functionality will be visible and available in the published edition. The publication is an automatic operation, so once you have configured the settings and you have put the data inside the proper folders, the appropriate folders, EVT will produce the web edition automatically. And also EVT is a client-only application, which means that it does not need to communicate with a server-side software. So in this way, it is easier to install and to maintain. What you need to do is just copy the EVT folder on the web in a web server, and then the edition is ready to be accessed via link. It is also user-friendly for the reader because it has a clean layout, clean and simple layout, and the navigation is made easy thanks to the different views and the organizations in boxes. Okay, I will now leave a word to Roberto. I don't know if you prefer to share your own screen.
Yes, please.
Okay. Oh.
I think you're on.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So, thank you again for your kind invitation. Thank you, Chiara, for getting us this far. First of all, I want to apologize because I was pretty confident we could show you the next version of EVT, EVT3, with a second beta. And since we are running late, this is not possible, unfortunately. And just because Murphy's Law is so effective, the EVT homepage is not available at the moment because there's been a hacker attack on the University of Pisa website. Okay, so what's the current development status so that we can understand where we are at? We have currently 3 versions of EVT. The first 2 versions are actually discontinued. The first version, EVT1, was based on the XSLT style sheets, and we had to change this approach and move to a different framework, one based on AngularJS with EVT2. And here you have a link to the final beta version, which was just published, recently published, thanks to Chiara's work. And then again, we moved to a different, a very close framework, the Angular framework, because Google improved AngularJS so much that it resulted to be incompatible with the previous version. So we had to decide what to do with EVT development. Just a few screenshots. This is EVT1. So there are 2 big projects using EVT1, the Digital Rosselli book and the Codice per l'Avvicino Digitale. These are the first 2 important edition projects taking advantage of EVT. Then we moved to EVT2, which at the start was only limited to critical editions, thanks to the work of Chiara Di Pietro and Chiara Martignano, among others. And as you can see here, there are several interesting features for people needing a critical edition, such as the collection view, the heat map showing where there is more variance in the critical text, a series of filters based on the TI markup. This is an important point because EVT takes TI as input, so the richer the markup, the most features are available. And here you can have, for instance, filters based on the type, cause, resp attributes of TI markup. And also the general introductory page, which is a version of the TI header element. Okay, this is a more a close-up to a specific edition, one of the Avicenna project experimental editions. As you can see here, you have on the left the critical text. Each highlighted item here is a critical apparatus entry. If you click on this, you will have a synchronized view of the corresponding apparatus entry. And all the sigla you see here, they are actually hypertext links, which are going to take you to the collection view here, where you can have the critical text and the selected witnesses side by side. Then again, we recovered the diplomatic and interpretative features of EVT1. So you can now have diplomatic editions and also the viscal integration, allowing you to show the quires of the manuscript and other features. I was a bit surprised because EVT2 was marked as a beta version, which should have scared people away. Well, at least that was my intention. But there are many more EVT2 based editions than EVT1 editions. Possibly because EVT2 doesn't need the building approach which was part of the XSLT framework used in EVT1. Okay, more editions. You have all the links. You can follow the links and browse for yourself. So as you can see here, you have, I collected a few particular examples. For instance, the Vita di San Teobaldo. Here you have one very big image which takes advantage of the OpenSea Dragon tiling feature. So you can scroll and the portion of the image will be enlarged and zoomed in when you stop at some point. The Rebus Siculis Carmen is an interesting edition because it combines two things that I thought were going to be kept separate, that is diplomatic edition and critical edition. I discovered later that many people are interested in combining at least one particular witness with the critical edition. EVT2 is very rigid from this point of view, but we solved this in EVT3, so you can have all three levels at the same time. The Progetto Vasto is an example of genetic criticism, again adapting EVT thanks to the CSS style sheets to propose a genetic approach to the text. And then you have classical diplomatic documents such as the Statuto di Monterosso. Okay, just a few words for EVT3, where you're going to have new features not available in the previous versions, such as the image view, where you can compare different images from the same edition. For instance, you could have the normal scan of a manuscript and then a virtual restoration version of the same folio. We want to have also a sort of book reader feature. You can see that here, with the possibility to add your own annotations to the manuscript. We introduced a new authorial philology view. This is basically, again, genetic criticism feature. One which is based on an analysis of the TI elements. We're combining elements from two different modules, that is from the transcription of primary sources module and the critical apparatus module, so that you can access different layers of authorial modifications to a work, as you can see here. Again, here you have the link to the prototype. This is Umberto Saba, Canzoniere 1919. This is really a prototype, but you're going to find this also as a sample edition in the EVT3 archive. Another feature which I've wanted for a long time, as you know, sometimes digital publication tools force you to adopt how can I say, a fixed view of the text, in particular of the editorial conventions. For instance, even in my field, which is the Old English language and literature, there are many possible variations in how the text is going to be presented. We decided to provide an easily customizable way to decide how to present text. For instance, here you have the standard choice with orig and reg elements. You can have a fine-tuning. You can also decide that you want a different treatment for text which is added below or above. And so in this configuration file here, you are going to do just that. You're going to say, okay, for text which is in the interpretative level, I want to have slashes instead of other styling, and this is the result. So you have color and highlighting in the diplomatic version, and you have a more traditional approach in the interpretative level. And finally, we are also using themes, which are a new feature in EBT3, to add support for accessibility. We are doing tests using a specific app, Siltide, to test again against accessibility criteria. And we're going to let people design their own themes so that you could have a spatial theme with, I don't know, high contrast or specific color palette for people who suffer from some visual impairment. This is already supported in the beta 2. I'm sorry I can't show that at the moment, but we have a prototype here. So this is a bit dated because it dates back to a few months ago, but you get the idea. You're going to be able to use the double endpoint attachment method for building critical apparatuses using TI. And this is a more remote future development. We want to be able to add our own notes in the EBT-based edition, so that you are going to be able to collect, on the one hand, specific entries such as critical apparatus entries or named entities and so on, and then add also your own annotations to that, so that EBT can work as a really usable and useful tool for research. Okay, before leaving the floor to Chiara again, I will show you EBT2. Why? Because at the moment, this is the most easy way to start experimenting with EBT, since the beta 2 is not ready yet. So just to give you a taste, if you should have Visual Studio Code already installed, and also have a couple of specific extensions, that is Live Server and Scholarly XML for validation, okay? Then if you choose to open a folder, okay, so I decided to open EBT2 beta 2.1, okay? At this point, you have in the config folder the basic configuration. As you can see, there is already a configuration that can be used, so it is usable right from the start. If you click on the Go Live button here on the lower right-hand side, the current configuration will be automatically loaded. And as you can see, this is the Avicenna experimental edition I showed you before, just as a screenshot, but here you can have it dynamically. So for instance, if I click on one of these, I will be taken to the collation view, and here I can choose to add more witnesses to confront them with the critical text. Okay, so this is the default sample edition, but as you can see here, you have more editions, more configurations. For instance, I could decide to have a look at the Dream of the Rude. You should, at this point, choose the Save As feature. you save this as config.json, and the corresponding sample edition is automatically loaded. Okay? So why am I showing you this? Because in EVT2 we have only one configuration file. In EVT3 beta 1 we have 3 different files, so it's a bit more complicated, but we are reverting to one file only. And also this is usable, and this is useful if you want to quick check for a TI file, because what is visible, for instance, di codice per la vicino, what works with EVT2 will be working with EVT3 as well. We are trying to keep 100% compatibility between TI documents which are migrated from EVT2 to EVT3. Okay, and I think that I am done at this point, so I can give the floor to Chiara again.
Thank you. I will present my screen again, share my screen again, because I accidentally took it off.
Okay. I will put it to the stage. Yes.
Okay.
Second. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I will show you EVT3 beta 1, where, as Roberto already mentioned, there are 3 different configuration files, but I want to show you practically the perks of using EVT. So I've just launched the default edition, which is this pseudo edition that was created to test EVT2, but we are still using it also as an example file in the EVT3 assets. So let's go here. Okay, as you can see here, we have the text with the critical apparatus. And in order to illustrate how you really can just focus on the TI documentation, no, the TI document, and everything will be also in EVT, I want to take here the XML TI document. This is the first sentence in the document. And for example, if I want to add, to make this word here bold, I can simply add a high element with the rend attribute. Okay, and if I go here in the custom styles, I can add a rule that says all elements with the rend attribute set to bold will be bold. So font weight bold. Okay, and if I go back here, you will see that now my laudabilis is in bold. So you can really focus on the encoding, and then with just some quick CSS rules that you can also ask an AI agent to write for you, you can modify the visualization of your edition. Okay, in EVT3, if we want to set up our edition, and today's exercise, we will ask you to try to set up EVT to launch it. And if you have your own edition files, it's even better because you can really test EVT with your own project. What you have to do is go here in the data folder. And in the data folder, you add the TI documents here. And then in the under the configuration folder, you have this first file called file_config. And here you set the edition URL. So for example, if I want to visualize the Codice per la Vicina edition, I have to change here the name and the path to the correct edition. And if I have set up different configuration files, I also have to change the corresponding configuration files. So if I reload my edition here in EVT, now I see the codice per vicino. Okay, the configuration files may seem scary because they are in JSON, so you need to be able to read and write JSON, but it's not that complicated. Basically, every property between double quotes are an aspect of the EVT interface that you can configure. So for example, here in the edition configuration file, you have the title of the edition. And if you change it, for example, like this, and you reload the edition, you will see that the title has changed. And some of the most important aspects that you can modify within this particular file are the available edition levels. So for example, if you want to provide the users with a diplomatic level, you can enable it here and it will become visible within the interface in the selector, diplomatic and interpretive. And another important aspect is if you want to allow your users to download the XML TI document, you can set this, it is automatically set to true, but you can set it to false if you don't want to. You can also decide which lists to show within the interface. So for example, if I do not want to show persons in the persons list in my edition, I go here, change it to false, and then again you can see the oh no, okay, of course there's a demo effect, so it isn't working. Okay, here we go, here in the name list. Okay, should be okay, and now we have removed the people list. And another very important property is the default edition level that you want to show to the users. So for example, here it is set to interpretive, but you can also select critical, you can also select diplomatic, and in EVT3, because it supports also the changes view that is meant for genetic editions and authorial philology, you also have this changes view available. The other important configuration file is this one, the UI, so the user interface configuration file. Here you can decide which views you want to show. So views are ways that the contents of your editions are organized and then displayed in the on your screen. So you can decide, for example, to show just the image, or so for example, if we want to enable the image only, we go here, we set it to true. And again, if we go back to the user interface, you will see now that the image only is available. But because there are no images set up, it is empty. And other important features are for the localization. So if you want EVT to detect the local language of the browser, and so for example, and set it to English or Italian, German, or the languages you want to set up here in available languages. You can also decide if you want the navigation bar here at the bottom displayed or not. This is the navigation bar. And then it also allows you to decide which bibliographic style you want to use to display the bibliographic citations within your edition. So there are many more aspects that you can configure. There is an EVT manual available, not within the build of EVT3, but I think, Roberto, correct me if I'm wrong, it is available in the EVT2 build. and it will be soon, of course, be available also for DVT3. And of course, again, if you want to, if you need our help in setting up your edition, we will be happy to help you. And just to finish our presentation, where you can find all the details of the exercise I've just showed to you, I wanted to quickly present you the references we've used for today's initial remarks about the process, the creation process of a DSC, and also some more useful resources to create digital editions that are not only robust, but also FAIR compliant, which means that they are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And in order to have FAIR digital editions, the tool that you decide to use for the publication is vital. And just as a final note, these are our email addresses, the email address of the EVT developers team and my personal email address. So feel free to contact us if you have any question that we will not be able maybe to answer right now. Okay.
Let me unshare your screen. Yeah, there we are.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Chiara and Roberto. This was brilliant, as always. And as always, before Monica and I abuse of our power as chairwomen, we will ask the audience if there's any questions, comments, or clarifications for our speakers, because I know we have plenty as always, but again, let's
I have a feeling I've been going too fast, perhaps, so any questions are welcomed.
That's entirely doable, but perhaps before we while waiting for some questions to trickle in from the chat, I have a really random questions out of curiosity, because of course, I mean, everyone in the DH community and the digital classics community has come across EVT one way or another, because it's like the most important tool right now. And just out of curiosity, just because nothing comes to mind in this moment, is there anything Byzantine like that has been some digital scholarly edition of a Byzantine text that has been done with EVT?
Not that I know of, actually. Well, I think the closest thing would be the edition of a couple of papyri, which there is one edition at the Museo Egizio. There is a vast papyri collection. We have a collaboration with the Museo Egizio in Turin. And so we are having, this is just experimental at the moment, but we're exploring, can I say, some further collaboration, perhaps having a simplified version of EVT, because we've been discussing with the curators of the museum, and they noticed that it is too far academic oriented, meaning that the critical apparatus, which is just natural for us, is an overload of information for people going to a museum. So we thought should have to simplify that, and also the interface is a bit complicated. When I thought it was really simple, but it all depends on the perspective audience, I think.
Sorry, I have a question about that, about papyri, because you said, so they have a different audience, but so this is an interesting thing, because So I mean, basically this is for visitors in the museum or people interested in visualizing
visitors in the
papyri
museum.
and the transcription. I think so, but this is interesting, of course. Probably, I mean, because usually something like EVT is for scholars producing, I mean, a critical edition, visualizing the critical edition. But I think this is an interesting test case where maybe you can skip, let's say, the critical apparatus, that part which is for scholars, but this can be an interesting tool also for visitors of the Egyptian Museum in Turin, where we have really a big audience. So to visualize the papyrus in this case, or papyri with a transcription and maybe possible different transcriptions. And then in that case, that depends on the language, if hieroglyphs or Greek or other languages, because they have a huge collection of papyri in different languages. So, I mean, sorry for interrupting, but I think this is super interesting in any case. You said, of course, this is maybe too much for...
If you're interested, we are organizing a conference. The title is Digital Philology and Glam in Turin, 18, 20 of May. So we're going to discuss just that. I'll send
That's interesting. So
in
general,
Please do. I mean, because it's sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that they showed us their current interface for the regular visitors of the museum. And basically, they are big tablets, touch surfaces, with a very simplified interface. So they're presenting few informations. They're often right under the papyri, or in any case in the collection area, and they present with very simplified information. So it would be interesting to find a common ground so that there is a sort of scalable interface. We start simple, but if you want more information, you can have that, because EVT can provide that. Okay.
I think
sorry, Martina, and then there is a comment.
Yes, so we will go back to this because
no. Sorry, we will definitely talk more about this also, because now we have. I mean, of course, I always have to reconduct everything to seals, because of course. But we are now conceiving a project here in Köln, which has to do with how to make seals more appealing in museums, while preserving all the information that they hold. Because I mean, as we know, I mean, papyri, at least they are nice to look at, but seals very often they are small. They are very small, like a €2 coin, and they are very oxidated, and they are black, and they're very difficult to display. So we have, in that case, both the problem of how to render them appealing, also in terms of imaging techniques. So how you make them bigger and more readable, but also on the other hand, how to provide the visitor with a usable interface for to absorb as much information as possible. So please share the details of the conference, because it's very actual, and also, as you were saying,
unfortunately I will be not in Torino, but definitely. But the other interesting thing is that so it's also interesting because in a workflow we should always consider this aspect of the critical apparatus, but of course making these things available for a big audience, and also making the audience aware of the fact that now we have the encoding. So this aspect, let's say, of the papyrus, of course we can have a transcription. Visitors, they should know that, but now really showing that something at least about the encoding. And sorry, last thing, because we were talking about papyri. In any case, in EVT we can also use, for example, Leiden Plus conventions and EPIDOC conventions, because this is possible. So I know that we use the TI XML guidelines for, let's say, manuscripts, but we have EPIDOC, but we can use EPIDOC given that we are talking about papyri as for inscriptions. So that in the end we can use EVT also for inscriptions and papyri. So using specific guidelines or specific communities. Okay, thank you.
And also, and then we go to the comments, to the question
Yeah.
from the audience. It's as Roberto, you were saying. I mean, we are. I mean, it's easy in a way to do something scalable. Also, because I mean, we are interested as scholars in definitely a much broader aspect. But I mean, in my opinion, it's always better to do, let's say, to do more and then to display less than starting from a more minimal approach. So, I mean, we get the best
That's
of
the
both
point.
worlds. But
I agree.
and on this, I will show the comment by one of our people from the public. So if you want to go ahead and read it, yeah.
Okay, I don't want to monopolize. Do you want to answer that, Chiara?
I can try. So very interesting presentation. Thank you. How do you see the role of paratext in DSCs? What are approaches to conserve different renditions of paratext, like the prelude or registers? Or I saw in the comment indices. Okay. I think this is very interesting because the granularity that you have to deal with visualization really changes the game in terms of how you want to design the interaction of users, and also how you want to highlight the presence of textual variation. So I think that when there are big chunks of text, like a whole index that is different in the different versions of the text, it really becomes a challenge. I don't think we have had use cases like this one so far. Am I wrong, Roberto?
Well, when you have a critical apparatus, so you have paratext, and so I think the problem is in the fact that we have a sort of a multidimensional tool, but we have to resort to a two-dimensional screen, which means that we cannot have, for instance, a 3D user interface or anything like that. It has been tried in the past. There were some tentatives to do that, and they all failed. What we can have is a sort of fake 3D, meaning that, in my opinion, a modern user interface should rely on demand panels and other user interface widgets, which are going to be sliding and disappearing when needed and stay put when they're not needed. Also, we have a problem with TI. Okay, sorry, I don't want to blame TI, but there is an ambiguity when it comes to the paratext, because we are dealing with that right now. We are discussing that right now. The front element is what precedes the actual text, but it could be something in the original document, or it could be your own editorial introduction. Okay, so what do you want to do? Because a very simple way to solve that would be to say, okay, anything which is editorial should go in the front. All the original documents should go in the body, even if you have a sort of a preface or another text preceding the current work you are going to display. Okay, but I think that not everybody would agree with that. So we're going to do what we already did with EVT1, that is distinguishing different chunks, divs in the front, and some of them are going to be viewable in the normal display, and some other chunks are going to be presented in the introduction, editorial introduction. Okay, and the same sort of goes with so many different, how can I say, boxes for information. So we don't want to have those all at once in the text. we are going to keep those logically separated and then have them on demand. This is what already happens for named entities, critical apparatus entries, and so on. And in the future, there will be more of that, which means we have to try and be, again, scalable and sensible in what you do. For instance, we want to have a full table of contents for navigation. And of course, if that's in a modal window, that's going to be usable, but not that usable. So we also want a panel available on demand where you have the logical structure of the document available at a glance so that the user can navigate. I hope I answered the original question. If not, please insist.
I can say one comment. So thank you, Roberto. I think definitely you answered. One thing, given that Sunoikis is as students, also as audience, one thing I should like to comment on this. So this discussion about the text, paratext, etc., and DTI is a long discussion, but also for our students. And related to this, so there are papers. What is a text really? So I mentioned in the title of not just one paper, but there are different papers about the TI and what is a text. And this is really a fundamental question. What is a text? The hierarchy of a text, the structure, and then the text, if it is a printed edition or a manuscript or a papyrus, etc. So what you said, Roberto, is fundamental in this. Of course, we can have different, let's say, opinions. So there are limits in the TI, as in every possible, let's say, formats or standard. We know that. But this question is essential, and also for our students. Maybe our guests, they mention advanced concepts, but if you're interested in that, I think you should first, for you, what is a text really? What is the document I'm going to encode first? This is the first question, and also in the question of our let's say attendant here. So about the paratext, this is the first question, and then of course you have to consider different tools or different, let's say, standards or formats. So just as a comment, especially for our students here. Yes, and if I may, so one thing you mentioned name entities, and you showed that briefly in the slides. You also showed this new possibility to add notes, but maybe I misunderstood. So, I mean, for example, for now, you can annotate, you can add annotations, including the so-called name entities. And so if I understand, you annotate them through EVT, you can see behind the files with, for example, XML tags for them or not. So can you briefly comment on this, Roberto?
Okay, yeah, I definitely went too fast about that. No, that's a final user feature, meaning that we experimented with that in EVT2, and I found the concept promising, meaning that we are going to take advantage of some feature of how browsers store information, so that you can open an EVT-based edition, select text, and then type your annotations and save them on your computer. Of course, being a client-only software means that it is great for long-term maintenance, but it also means that you're limited in what you can do. For instance, this would be a great collaborative feature if you could also share your notes. And at the moment, this is not possible, not until we have a client-server version of EVT or a minimal server furnishing some features like annotation sharing. So I hope I cleared that for you.
Yes.
And going back to named entities, a feature I didn't mention. So this is a future feature I want to have developed. Something we are going to work, I think, as soon as the second beta is out, is the processing of DTI document as data, as processable data. meaning that you have a lot of information, which usually, unless you're using a database, is used only for visualization purposes. While it would be very interesting to use that to do cross queries. Okay. And for instance, all of this was born from a young researcher in Siena who used EVT1 to create an edition of merchant books. And he asked me, yes, oh, this is very well, but I would like to know how many merchants bought silk between 1320 and 1350. And how many of these have their own depots? How many of these were employing women? That is a lot of information which were in the actual documents, but EVT didn't know how to do researches. So we are going to add, when we're going to add the text search engine, we are going to add a function to do cross queries among named entities, establishing relations between different information in the TI document. And I think this could be really, really useful, especially for historical studies, but also, for instance, for poetry, to compare, I don't know, rhythmical patterns or stylistic features, in which part of this poem there are, I don't know, metaphors combined with enjambment, I don't know, just to make a few examples.
Excellent. So thank you, Roberto. So I think so EVT is going on, and this is really fantastic. Yeah. Well, yes. Thank you. And Chiara at the beginning said, well, I'm sorry, I apologize because we are presenting not many tools. Well, but also your presentation, Chiara, you present many things, and then of course EVT. So I know that being in the field, we begin to see, well, we don't have enough. This is our usual approach, but to be honest, we have seen many interesting things, and then definitely, of course, EVT and the great job done in your community. And yes, so I don't know if there are other questions.
There don't seem to be. No.
Maybe only if we maybe just one thing, Martina, maybe can you say just a few words about the exercise, because usually in our class outlines in Sunoikisis we have also an exercise, and thank you, Roberto and Chiara, for providing the exercise. So maybe a few words about that. So I see that.
Yes, I think that we were discussing before with Roberto and Chiara that so the exercise is going to be so the setting up of a, so like pretty much what they showed in terms
of course, exactly.
But perhaps you might want to elaborate on that. And of course, just 1 second, I'm talking to the audience now. Of course, if you are as always, in the course with me, the exercise is compulsory. If you are not, of course, feel free to do that, because with these kind of teaching, the best thing is just to exercise and to keep doing things. So feel free to join the students. Klammer zu, as we say in German. Go ahead.
If I may add, I think that if the students want to try, maybe download other TI documents of other edition projects and see how they are visualized in EVT, and maybe test that out, so that if they do not have their own TI file to work with, if they do, then it's perfect. They can try to view their own editions with EVT. Otherwise, they can maybe download other TI documents of editions or transcriptions or everything they know of and they want to see in action with EVT. I think that could be also helpful. And if they want to try also to modify the TI document, maybe as I showed with adding new elements, and then try to control how that element is visualized and presented in the interface with a CSS rule, that if they have the technical expertise to do that, that is also a nice exercise.
And we are available
Thank
in
you.
case
Thank you very much.
of when help is needed. We're there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I think I will try, because I mean I've always thought of EBT as something for, you know, big digital scholarly editions of, you know, big texts, and I want to try with, because I mean my of course I'm so sorry that I always redirect everything to seals, but the thing is that we so the difference between what I'm always working with and digital philology, let's say, in a broader sense, is that I deal with many small texts instead of one big one, if I can put it like that. So I do not need collation in a way, but we do have the concept of parallel seals. So we do have so a seal is a unique object, but it has been struck in a small series, so like 3, 4, 5 examples. And the biggest apport of sigillography is to put these seals together, which might be one in Italy, one in Germany, one in Australia, and to, first of all, to recognize that they belong together, second of all, to recognize that they were struck by the same metrics, and third, to see to whom they belonged, what was this person's job, and so on and so forth. So I always think of this as if it was like a collation of manuscripts in a broader sense. So I think that I mean, it was already in the back of my head for so long to to try and use EBT for seals, but also to test the concept of parallel seals against the collation let's say aspect, and see, because I'm sure this will be beneficial for perhaps it might it might yield results. Just
It sounds like you need the synoptic view, which is in EBT3, with some special treatment for images. Meaning you want images, you want annotations about the images, and then text, and be able to compare the different elements in a flexible way. But I should know more about your use case, because this kind of interface can be created. I think that the provision to do that is already in EBT3, but I would like to see perhaps a mock-up or just a description of the way you would like to have these view organized, so that we can try and see if it is already feasible or if it needs some specific development.
Definitely, I will definitely come up with a mock-up. Also, I mean, because in CGDoc we created a chained odd from TI, so I think it should be it's a usable as it is in terms of at least of schema. But yeah, in terms of visualization, I have to because I have to, let's say, conceive, let's say, a use case of for prosopography, history, and also, for example, epigraphical criteria for dating seals, which would be, of course, much more interesting if looked at compared with their so with their, let's say, with their parallel seals, but also with their edition. So yeah, I will definitely, you will definitely get a very thorough email by me very soon.
Okay, you're welcome.
We're used to very thorough emails, so no worry.
Thank you so
It's
much.
dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. That's very dangerous
for you. Well, there is a last comment in our chat. And I can say one thing about this comment because, in my experience, EVT is, let's say, user-friendly. I can say that. The difficulty, of course, there are many complexities because it's a complex and powerful tool in my experience, but I think that is user-friendly, definitely. The difficulties then are in the document you're working with. This is why always your research question, also as a novice, what are you looking for? This is a difficult question, we know. There are many situations where we don't know what we're looking for, what we are working with, but still. So this is my very generic comment on this, but yeah. So
yeah, it's a fine line. We cannot. It is just impossible to be able to support each and every TI element. Okay, and also the combination of the different TI elements is something giving us nightmares, because sometimes we have to look into the nesting of a specific element with other elements, and then subsequent nesting and so on. And that's a really big problem, because, of course, we have to keep a model of the data in memory, but Chiara will be able to explain that better than me, which means that things can get really difficult to do sometimes. But what we do is to try to support TI without being, how can I say, without mandating specific approaches, if possible. Okay, so we're not going to say if you want to see a critical edition, you have to put, I don't know, the critical apparatus in a list app here. Okay, that would be wrong, in my opinion. We are going to support list app elements in the back, but also elsewhere possibly. Okay, the back would be the most logical place to put a list app. And that also means that we have to be careful with specific combinations of elements. Okay. I once wrote a slide, everybody loves TI until they don't. And that is very often true in my experience. But I always get back there, and you can discuss with the editor. So that's it's a great community to be in.
yeah.
Indeed. And I think that on this note, we can end our session. What do you think, Monica? We are
yes, we are
already 7:02.
a bit over. Yes, now it's time.
It's always like that. We always go over because the discussions are always so engaging.
Yes.
And so I would like to thank once again our great speakers. Thank you so much. And I will see you all. We will see you all next Tuesday, May 5th, for a very interesting session by our friend and colleague Anna Busch here from Cologne on titled From the Manuscript to the Digital Scholarly Edition. So we will do a lot of digital paleography next week. And so thank you again very much, Roberto and Chiara. And yeah, have a nice evening.
You too.
Thank you. You too as well.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.